Hi guys, I'm Melanie. Thanks for tuning in today. This is the first part of a 4-part series for complete beginners. So if you've never done yoga before in your life, don't worry about it. We're going to start with some really basic poses, and then next week and the week after, we'll start building on those poses. So what do you need? A mat is great, but if you don't have one, don't worry. Workout shoes are great too, for now at least. And then just wear some loose-fitting, stretchy clothes that you can move around in. And you don't need socks, so you can take those off right now. Let's get started. So, the first pose is mountain pose. Mountain pose is a really foundational pose for all of the standing poses that we'll do later. So we're going to start with some alignment. Let's build from the bottom up. So, bring your awareness to the feet. The feet should be about hip width apart and parallel. Now I want you to lift up the toes as high as you can and feel the bottom of the feet, especially the point in the ball of the foot underneath the big toe, underneath the little toe, and in the heel. These are the points where your feet are pressing into the earth and that provide you with that stability. So now press the toes back into the mat and feel each toe. Yeah, so your feet are really alive and awake right now. Now move your attention and awareness up into the knees. We're going to pull up on the kneecaps so that we activate the thighs. Your tailbone is reaching towards the ground and your stomach is active. But we also have an open chest, so the shoulder blades are pulling together and the fingertips are reaching towards the mat. Your head is reaching also lightly towards the ceiling so that we have a really long stance. Close your eyes for a minute. And then lean a little bit forward. Lean a little bit to the left and to the back of your mat. And notice how the weight is shifting here between the feet. Come back to the middle. And find the place where your weight is evenly distributed. Take a couple breaths here. And then open your eyes slowly. That was mountain pose. Now we'll move on to some half sun salutations, just to warm up the body. So with your next inhale, raise the hands up, bring the palms together, and reach the fingertips towards the ceiling. With your exhale, bring the palms to the sides, pressing down in a dive forward. We're going to bring the fingertips all the way to the mat and let the head hang heavy when we come to the bottom. Inhale, press the feet into the mat, lift with a really long back, reach up with the fingertips, and we're going to come right back down. Exhale, forward fold. Bring the fingertips to the mat, bend the knees as much as you need to, and let the head hang. Inhale, lift up, lead with your chest, reach up, press in the feet, and reach through the fingertips, and then come right back down for the last forward fold at this time. Exhaling completely. Inhale, press in the feet. Reach up. Exhale the thumbs to the center of the chest. So those were some half sun salutations. Bring your hands to your sides, coming back into mountain pose. So you may have noticed that I was prompting you to inhale and lift your arms, and exhale, come into the forward fold. That's something I'm going to be doing throughout our practice today, because it's a really integral part of yoga. It's the part that makes it really calming and relaxing. And it's also a great indicator if you've gone too far in a pose and maybe you need to back out. So we want to try and keep the breath really even and steady. If it gets choppy, then you know, hey, I need to back out a little bit. Okay, so let's move on to the next poses, the warrior poses. I want you to come to the front of your mat and take a big step back with the right foot. We're going to move the right foot a little towards the right side of the mat and making sure that the toes are facing in a little bit. We want to make sure we have some mobility, some space in the hips. The front toes are facing directly forward. So I want you to bend in the front knee. So you notice that my knee is farther than the ankle. We don't want that. We want the knee directly over the ankle. So I can either pull back or I can take a bigger step back with my right foot. And then I can come deeper. This will intensify the pose because the thigh is really working the more we come parallel to the mat. Okay, so now I want you to rotate the right hip point forward, left hip point back. So the hips are moving towards becoming in one line. Then we inhale, lifting the hands up. If this is uncomfortable in your shoulders or your neck, you can bring the hands back to the hips. And here we are, warrior one. It's a really strong pose. Our stomach is engaged, so we're probably breathing more into the ribs and the chest area. Maybe you can sink a little bit deeper. But again, use the breath to gauge how deep you should be going in the pose. And then with your next exhale, straighten the front leg. Bring the hands to the hips. We're going to open up that back foot now so that it's parallel with the back of the mat. And scoot the left foot to be more in a line with the back foot. So that means the heel is about in line with the arch or the back heel. And then bend in the front knee. We're coming into warrior two. So for warrior two, the hips are opening to the side. We're pulling back with the right hip, and that has a tendency to bring the left knee in with it. So I want you to try and pull that knee back over the ankle so that it's directly over the ankle. You should be able to see your big toe here. And then inhale, lift the arms, reach the fingertips in opposite directions, and then feel that nice stretch in the right hip. And feel your left thigh really starting to work. A couple of breaths here. One more. And then straighten the front leg. Rotate the left toes inwards. And the right toes to the back of the mat. We're going to come into warrior two on the right side. So check that the back foot is parallel with the back of the mat and that the right heel is in a line with the arch of the left foot. And you can bend into the knee. Again, if we need the pose to be less intense, we can pull out a little bit. If we want to intensify, we bring the front thigh more parallel to the mat. You'll start to feel it. Okay, and then draw out the arms. Check your front knee. Make sure you can see the big right toe. And then gaze over your right fingertips. Try to relax the neck and the shoulder area as much as you can. Take a couple breaths. Maybe finding space to come a bit deeper. Try and stay really active in the back foot. We're pressing the back foot in the mat and really activating the left thigh. One more breath. And then exhale the hands to the hips, straighten the front leg. We're going to take a step in with the back foot and move the foot a bit more to the left, the right foot a bit more to the right. Again, so we have more space in the hips. Just square them off. So make sure the toes are pointing a bit more forward and that the right toes are parallel with the sides of the mat. Then bend the knee. Make sure your stance is the right size, the right length. And then rotate the left hip point forward, right hip point back. And then inhale the arms up. Bring the baby fingers in a little bit. This might help you to rotate the shoulders down and back. A couple of breaths here. Feel a nice stretch in the left hip. And then with your next exhale, straighten the front leg. So that was warrior one on your right side. We're going to rotate the toes back in, left toes back to the front of the mat, and we're going to take a step back to the front. We're coming into a forward fold. So I want you to just try and get really heavy in the upper body. The chin's going to come to the chest. And we're going to roll really slowly forward. Bend the knees so that you're really loose in the knees and you have a lot of space in the lower back to come down. And come all the way down so that the fingertips reach the mat. Bend your knees as much as you need to. And then let the head and the upper back get really heavy. You can shake the head yes and no. And then grab the elbows and maybe swing a bit from side to side. Really enjoy that release of tension in the upper back and shoulders and in the back of the neck. This is a great pose if you're maybe stressed at work and you have some tension in the upper back. And then release the fingertips to the ground. And we're going to take a big step back with the right foot and bring the toes all the way to the mat. Then plant the hands into the mat and take a big step back with the left foot. So the feet are about hip width apart. The hands are shoulder width and the wrists are underneath the shoulders. We're coming into something like a push-up position. It's called plank. Reach the head forward. Stomach active, thighs engaged, heels pressing back. If you need to come down to your knees right now, go ahead and do that. And with your next exhale, lift the hips up as high as you can and reach the heels towards the mat. We're coming into downward facing dog pose. It looks kind of like an upside down V. Look forward at your hands. Make sure that the fingers are really spread wide and pressing into the mat. The arms are active. And then bend your knees slightly. Let your head hang. The neck should be pretty loose here. You can shake your head again, yes and no. Take a couple more breaths here. Reach the tailbone up towards the ceiling. We want to find some space in the back. And then with your next inhale, come forward into plank position. Again, shoulders over the wrists. And we're going to lower all the way to the mat. You can do this from your knees as well. The elbows are facing back towards the back of the mat. And then we uncurl the toes, bring the tops of the feet to the mat. Shoulders back. Inhale, lift the chest. We don't have to lift it that much. But we'll find that you really start to work in the lower back. So there's really barely any weight in the hands. You can even lift them off the mat. And then exhale, come back down. Curl the toes under. Come back to the knees and plank. And then lift the hips up into downward facing dog. Press in the hands, lift the tailbone. Bend the knees. And then with your next exhale, straighten the left leg, reach the left heel towards the mat, and bend the right knee deeply. Inhale, bend the left knee. Exhale, straighten the right leg, right heel towards the mat. Inhale, bend the right knee. Exhale, reach the left heel towards the mat. Inhale, bend the left knee. Exhale, reach the right heel towards the mat. And then come back to a neutral position. The knees can stay slightly bent, or you can reach the heels towards the mat and maybe straighten the legs. Find what works for you, but we really want to keep a long back. And then inhale, come back forward into plank pose. And exhale, slowly lower all the way to the mat. Uncurl the toes, tops of the feet on the mat. Inhale, press the feet into the mat. Press a pubic bone into the mat and lift the chest. Try to keep the neck long. And then exhale, come back down. We're going to come back into plank from the knees. And then lift the hips back into downward facing dog. We're going to stay here for just a couple breaths. Don't worry, you don't need to nail this pose in the first try. It's pretty complicated. You'll be learning new things about it all the time, I promise. One more breath. And then exhale, bring the knees to the mat. Walk the hands back. And we're going to come into child's pose. Child's pose is a great pose if you ever need a rest. So like I mentioned, if the breath gets choppy or held, or you just need a break, then child's pose is there for you. So this is how it goes. I want you to bring the knees to the edges of the mat, and then walk your hands out. The big toes are touching behind you. So the palms of the hands are on the mat. The forehead comes to the mat. And then once we're here, we're just letting everything sink into the mat. So letting gravity do its work. Don't worry if your hips are not yet all the way on the heels. If they're even this high, that's okay. With time, they'll start to move towards the heels. We're going to take a couple deep inhales and exhales here. And try and think with each exhale that you're letting a little bit more go, sinking a bit deeper into the mat. Especially letting go in the shoulders, in the hips, and even in the face and in the jaw. Sometimes we hold tension there. One more breath. And then walk the hands back. We're going to scoot the legs out in front of us and come into boat pose. So for boat pose, we're balancing on the sit bones. So make sure you can move the fleshy part away from the sit bones. We're bringing the legs together, hands underneath the knees, and then lifting up the shin bones. We have a long back. The head is reaching towards the ceiling. So I want you to try and reach the arms out, reaching the fingertips forward. And if you notice that the back immediately collapses, then stay right here with the hands underneath the knees. Either way, try to hold the pose for a couple more breaths. One more deep breath. And then bring the feet to the mat, forehead to the knees, arms cross over the legs. One deep breath here. And then we'll come back into boat pose, lifting up the lower legs, grabbing underneath the knees at first, reaching the chest up, lifting the head, and then reaching the arms out if that works for you. Couple more breaths here. And then let the feet come to the mat, forehead to the knees, cross the arms over the legs. And then lift the head, stretch out the feet, flex the feet, make sure the sit bones are pressing into the mat. Lift the head up towards the ceiling for a long spine. Please note if your back collapses again here, bend your knees in the forward fold. This will help you to hinge forward from the hips. Okay. So wherever you are, start to walk forward with the hands. You don't really need to come as deep as you can here. I would just come to where your back starts to round. Stay there. Start breathing. And think with each inhale that you want to create space in the spine. You're reaching forehead forward with the head. And with each exhale, then maybe you'll find a bit more space. Maybe you can come a bit deeper. But we don't need to push or pull in this position. We can just let gravity do the work. One more breath. And then slowly come back to sitting. We're going to come into the final pose, corpse pose. So we're just laying on the back. And we're just going to take a couple breaths here, but if you have more time, I encourage you to spend more time in corpse pose. So you can let the feet come to the edge of the mat, toes fall open, and then we'll just come all the way down to the back, hands to the side, palms face up, shoulders underneath the back, and then close your eyes. And just try to let the body get really heavy. The breath is really natural. It may be shallow or deep, but just let it be. However it is. Two more breaths here. And then bring the soles of the feet to the mat. Bend the knees, roll over to your right side. Just for a breath. And then press yourself up into sitting. Just find a comfortable sitting position. And then bring the hands together in front of your chest. So that's it for today. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been a lot of fun. For corpse pose, don't worry. We'll spend more time in corpse pose later. It's a really great pose. And please join us next week where we'll be building on the poses and learning new sequences. So thanks again. Namaste.